Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to the Waterloo City Council Finance Committee. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Morrissey?
Here.
Mrs. Klein?
Did she hear me?
Yep. Mrs. Klein? Okay. And Mrs. Jewin?
Here. Hey,
Motion to approve the agenda and the minutes of April 27th, 2020 as proposed.
Second?
discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Would someone take travel requests, please?
Madam Chairwoman, the first travel request is Brock Welliver, Fire Prevention Officer, class meeting ICC Fire Inspector 2 certification, online Waterloo, Iowa. The dates no later than June 30th of 2020, and the amount not to exceed $219. The second one is Michelle Wiedner, Chief Financial Officer. It is for the Iowa Governmental Audits Local Government Update Destination Inter-Office Webcast or Des Moines, Iowa. Dates May 11th, 2020, and the amount not to exceed $225. And the last one is also Michelle Wiedner, Chief Financial Officer. It's for Iowa Governmental Roundtable. It's a webinar, May 12th of 2020, in an amount not to exceed $300.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Would someone take the pre-authorizations, please?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the following pre-authorizations expending over $1,000. First is building maintenance with the amount estimated shipping handling of $1,550 for removal of concrete and replace pool deck sections at Gates Pool. Next is building maintenance with the amount estimated shipping and handling not to exceed $6,000 for repair piping at the Gates Pool. Convention Center is next with the amount estimated shipping and handling $2,300 for rekeying of many parts of the facility. Next is engineering with amount estimated shipping and handling of $5,000 for traffic control for the fiscal year 2020 Osage Road and Wagner Road railroad crossing repairs. Next is leisure services with amount estimated shipping and handling of $8,164 for additional playground mulch at Elks Park. And next is leisure services, amount estimated shipping and handling, $3,342 for Young Arena ammonia ice system annual preventative maintenance. Next is the MIS department with the amount estimated shipping and handling of $4,581.15 for 5 Dell Latitude laptops. Next is the sanitation department with the amount estimated shipping and handling of $23,387.50 plus $2,340.80 shipping and handling for 200 large green carts, 250 medium green carts, and 50 large brown cow carts. And then finally is the street department with the amount estimated shipping and handling of $23,274 plus $2,000 shipping and handling for 25-ton tilt tag trailer.
Second?
Discussion? All
I
in
have-
favor? I'm sorry.
On number 4 and 5. And my
Four.
only, number 4, number 5 of the pre-auth.
Okay.
I just have a question about, do we have the money? I mean, they're so up in the air what we're going to do with the pools. And I'm just wondering, in the mess that we're in with the pandemic, that's an expenditure that we should be expending right now, since we're not sure which way we're going to go with these pools. But I don't,
Thank you. Mrs. Weidner, do you want to address that, or is Greg there, or who wants to address that?
This is Noel.
Okay, Noel?
Noel Anderson, Community Planning and Development Director. So we have existing bond money, I believe of $90,000 for pool repairs. Even if we don't open them this season, since we've not started construction on any kind of a new aquatic center or pool, we would still have to operate at least the Gates pool for one season while the new one would be constructed. And I see Paul is on as well if he wants to add that, but we're basically trying to be prepared to try to have a pool season, whether it's this year or next year, while the new one would be being built.
And it is bond money.
It is existing bond money.
Okay, Mr. Hutting, do you want to address that?
I can chime in briefly. I agree with everything Noel has said. With the situation with the casino now, our chances of getting a 50% grant for construction of pools are pretty slim, probably for the next year or two. And that's just a guess on my part, but having talked with folks over at gaming, I think it's wise to get these at least up and in running condition, because it could be a lot longer than we had hoped before we actually have a new aquatic center.
Okay, good, thank you. Does that address your questions, Mrs. Klein?
Thank you so much.
Okay, we have a motion and a second then. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Would someone take budget line items to be amended and other committee business, please?
Madam Chairwoman, I would like to do number 13, which is a motion to approve the budget amendment to increase reimbursement for services revenue and health services expenses in the amount of $4,000 for animal control as submitted by animal control. Number 14 is a motion to approve the budget amendment to budget for refund revenue received and spend it for chemicals in the amount of $16,128 for the local option tax coding activity as submitted by the street head. Number 15 is a motion to approve the project budget for the Newell Street Rise Road project at a total cost of $995,695.75, funded with $400,000 in Rise grant proceeds, $400,000 in local option tax funds, and $126,945.75 in future tax increment financing funds as submitted by engineering. Number 16 is a motion to approve the budget amendment to use general fund balance to pay expenses to the State of Iowa Medical Enterprise for costs related to future additional fees to be received for ground emergency medical transport in the amount of $600,000 as submitted by the fire department. And finally, number 17 on this one is motion to approve the budget amendment to use fund balance for additional unemployment expenses to be paid in the amount of $7,014 as submitted by Human Resources. And under other committee business, number 18 is a request for authorization to dispose of convention center furnishing and equipment per attached list.
Madam Chair?
Yes, is there a second first?
Yes, but I just wanted to make one amendment to number 16. That's Medicaid in those two spots, not medical. And with those two corrections, I'd like a second.
Great, thank you, Mr. Morrissey. Discussion or questions on any of those items?
Yeah, Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
With number 15, I take it that this money's already been approved. Especially I'm looking at the local option tax money, and I'm just a little bit leery about local option tax monies and how they're going to be coming in with that one, and I wish that could be addressed by whoever there. And then on number 18, approval of that means what? Because that list of items that are being disposed of, I'm just questioning how those are disposed.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Anderson, would you like to address number 15, or is somebody else there?
Well, Anderson, Community Planning Development Director. I mean, yeah, this is obviously the RISE project associated with the Control project, which I think we're all excited about. I understand Mr. Morrissey, Councilman Morrissey, about the concerns of the local option. I don't know if Michelle wants to touch upon those, if we've heard anything new on those numbers. in the overall picture, this is a small amount for the local option tax to match these RISE proceeds to get this larger project moving ahead.
What about the TIF funds? Are those available? Are they in the fund?
The TIF funds are being created with the new control project being built up.
Okay, and that's to be expected that money will come in without any trouble. Right? Okay.
This is Michelle Wiedner. I think that'll be a couple years before that, several years probably before that comes in, but it's a small amount. If local option does better, maybe we can pay that from local option. We don't know yet.
Okay. What about the local option? Are you getting any info from the state?
Not yet. We've not. They have told us. I don't expect to hear before the end of this. I hope by the end of May, but it could be June, because it all lags. Businesses have to send in their returns. The state has to compile them before they'll get back to us. So we just aren't going to know for a while yet.
Okay. What about the convention center?
So you have the list of items attached, and these are mostly, they're all very old, not going to be appropriate for our new uses. We had tried with the chairs to use an auctioneer, and we tried Purple Wave. Purple Wave doesn't want to take them, and the auctioneers seem to not really want them either. So it was very interesting. We ended up putting the chairs on Facebook Live, and they were gone within like 6 hours. So I think we intend to do all of this through Facebook, and hopefully they'll all trickle out, and it'll be a great way to clean the closets at the convention.
Yeah. Good, thank you. Does that answer your questions, Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, under bills payment, the dollar amount of $817,548.25 as reported in accounts payable dated May 4th, 2020. Receive, place on file, and forward to the full council.
Second.
Can we adjust that to 28 cents, please?
I'm sorry, I wrote it down as 28 and read it wrong twice. So thank you, yes, 28 cents. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Well, Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I could ask Michelle Wiedner, are you seeing reflected in the bills coming in the effects that COVID-19 is having even on our expenditures and the bills?
We are not seeing a large increase in bill payments at this time. We have had some for supplies, hand sanitizer, sanitizing equipment for police and fire, some face masks, but really our expenses are not overwhelming at this point. I think this is a different kind of disaster than we've ever had in the years I've worked here. So I think the impacts will be felt to us in terms of revenue that won't be received, more so than additional expenses that we would typically have, like in a flood, for example, where we have to go out and fix things. I don't think we're just not seeing that.
Are you seeing?
The expenses are down this week, which is good.
Yes, I think I have noticed that. I think it potentially is. We have asked, Mayor and I have asked departments to try to conserve their funds and only spend what they really need. And with some of our facilities being closed, that's reducing costs there. So I'm hopeful that I'm seeing departments trying to conserve their funds right now.
Michelle, Ms. Wiedner, is it too early to see any effects that it's having on different parts of the revenue sources?
For most of them it is. There are a couple things we already know about. For example, we receive payments from the casino weekly, and those have stopped since mid-March when it closed. So that's about maybe 100,000 a month, I want to say. And so now we've been 6 weeks without that, and I don't know when they might be allowed to reopen. Interest rates had, we've been earning a little bit more on some of our funds, and that's plummeted. So I know our interest earnings are going down. We just don't know about larger sources yet. Obviously, fees for any leisure activities and culture and arts have stopped. So there are some that we already see reductions in. The larger ones, I think property taxes, I'm hopeful we'll be okay on property taxes, and we won't know about that till next October. Next October will be when people probably may not be able to afford to pay. So that will be when we might see that. And local option and road use, we just don't know yet. We may start to see, maybe the road use payment we get in May might give us a little bit of inkling. We just don't know yet. And as I said, a local option, I think it could be, you just don't know, May, June, or later. We just have to wait. And hotel motel is really hard to guess. We only receive hotel motel payments quarterly, and typically in June we receive one for the quarter January through March. So we aren't really going to know the impact on hotel motel until we receive our payment in September, which is a long ways off. But that's just local government. Our receipts just lag the economy, so it's nerve-wracking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Mr. Morrissey?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Sure, if I could add, this is Paul Hudding. I did turn in a report to the mayor and Michelle relative to our revenues and expenses. And there was an article done right after our last board meeting, and that reported the revenue losses. What that didn't report were the expenses that have been reduced. And some of those are just obvious reductions. We're not buying products for resale for hockey games, for example. But we've also cut in a lot of other ways. Our utility bills are down and so forth. So the overall picture is not good, but it's not as grim as that article painted it to be after our last board meeting. So it's a little better. It's still nothing to celebrate.
And I should add, at the department head meeting on Thursday, I asked if each department is looking at their anticipated shortfall, whether it be lack of revenue or whatever. And each department is very conscientiously looking at their current year's budget, seeing where they can have savings. Any of those dollars might be necessary for us for next year. So I'm glad that all the department heads are going through that exercise in conjunction with Mrs. Wiedner and the mayor. So thank you. Okay, any other questions on the bills payment? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned, and just in time, because city council starts in 1 minute.
Hello, everyone. Everyone out there? Madam Clerk, could you please read the roll?
Mr. Bozen,
Here.
Mr. Amos,
Here.
Mr. Morrissey,
Here.
Mrs. Klein,
Here.
Mr. Foyce,
Here.
Mr. Greider,
Here.
and Mrs. Jewin.
Here.
All right, thank you. If you would please join me in a moment of silence, after which Kelly Felkley, City Clerk, will read the pledge. All right, Kelly, if you would lead us in the pledge.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the
of the
flag
United States
of
of
the United
America
States of America
and to the
and
republic
to the
for which it
republic
stands,
for which it
one
stands,
nation, under
one
God,
nation, under God,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
A motion to approve the agenda as presented and the minutes of the April 27th, 2020 regular session as proposed.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. It is now time for oral presentations. Your opportunities to comment on non-agenda related items. And today we have Mr. Forrest Dillevue, who would like to do oral presentations. Mr. Dillevue.
I don't see him on the.
233-6516
Must not be on.
or
He's not
let
on.
me see if I see his cell. Not even his cell. I
Even
have a
on
cell number of 240-5137.
There's no unidentified numbers out there.
All right. All right. Is there anyone else that would like to comment during orals? Council?
Are we doing?
Count-
Yes, I would like to.
Yes, ma'am.
A very dear friend and a longtime city council attendee, Mr. Jim Chapman, passed away this last week and was buried. And I went to his ceremony, sort of the way they do funerals, is you drive your car to the cemetery and you sit in your car and watch the whole. And what I want to say about Mr. Jim Chapman is this: many people sit at home and don't pay any attention. And for those, that's a choice. We all make our choices in how we participate in this republic of ours. But he chose to get involved. And for whatever makes a person, you have to admire that. You have to admire someone who gets out on those cold winter nights and comes and speaks their mind. And he was always respectful at the microphone. I admired him for that. He became a personal friend of mine, and I just want to do a shout out to him. Even in his little paper from the funeral home, it said he was a proud member of the Backbench Boys. And I just want to acknowledge Mr. Jim Chapman.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Klein. I echo your comments as well. He and I probably for a while would talk once a week over the course of several years. So I want to thank you so much for your comments and hearts and prayers for his family. All right. Is there anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor?
Mrs. Jewin.
Yeah, just real quickly, want to wish Paul a happy birthday. Today's his birthday. Tomorrow is Jonathan's birthday. But on a larger scale, perhaps, today is National Firefighters Day. And I want to thank the first responders, fire officials. They do a great job keeping us safe, and I think it's an opportune time for us to thank them for all that they do on our behalf.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for those birthday shout outs and Firefighters Day. Is there anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Morrissey.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to bring up a couple things. First of all, being that we're not all together and things are somewhat different than they were a year ago or even years past, May is still Bike Month. Okay, and so I just wanted to let people know that it is National Bike Month and will be the whole month of May, even though we won't be having the celebrations as normal. Those celebrations, my understanding, will take place in September, and hopefully we'll be able to enjoy that at that point in time. And the second thing I just wanted to mention on a little, quite a bit more serious note is that it's unfortunate that in this national calamity, this national crisis that we're going through and have been going through for several months now, that some comments are made which are not very scientific and at the same time give the impression of being informed even though they're misinformed and in many ways misguided. And I just hope that people out there will listen to their county health departments and the medical and scientific experts rather than politicians, even like myself, who people call a politician. Listen to the experts, the science people, the doctors that are on the front line of this, the medical experts. And one of the things that a person that I know and I respect, named Chris Schwartz, has said is that, and it's so true, is that we do know as a society how to revive our economy, but what we don't know how to do is revive the dead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
quickly, would it be possible for us to schedule a work session with Michelle, Jamie Knudsen, and maybe Randy Bennett? One would be on the road use tax, where we're at, what we have, what projects we have laid out, and just an informational meeting on everything that we spend that money on and how it may affect us. And the other one would be on the local option sales tax with Jamie, because I'd really like to get an accurate accounting on the projects that we have outstanding, the projects that we have left, and the amount of money that we have allocated so far, so that we as a council coming up with a future contracts can make informed decisions on where we sit with local option sales tax.
All right. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bolden. We'll get that organized.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't heard Councilman Bozen say that. I would second that. I would hope that we could have that kind of a work session.
Yep, I got it. Anyone
Okay,
else?
motion to close oral presentations, receive comments, and place on file.
Second.
All right, that motion's been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Mrs. Jewin.
Yeah, hold on, I'm struggling a bit here to find, approve the consent agenda, and I've lost my note telling me the amount. I didn't receive the
I can read that off.
bill payment.
I can read the bills
Can you tell
payment,
me that
Mrs. Jewin.
amount?
Yep, the bills payment amount is $817,548.28.
Okay. So, receive and approve the consent agenda with the addition of 1A1 in the amount of $817,548.28, and approve as presented.
Second.
All right, that motion's been made with the second. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey,
Yes.
Mrs. Klein,
Yes.
Mr. Foyce,
Yes.
Mr. Greider,
Yes.
and Mrs. Jewin.
Yes.
All right, thank you. We have, I think it's 6 reappointments. One, Ms. Taja Thoreau for Human Rights Commission and for General Contractors Board. We have William Kugler, Ross Samick, Deb Waterman, Dennis Wilson, and for the Design Review Board, we have Michelle Weber. So thank you. Could someone take number 2, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Morrissey.
I'd like to make a motion to receive and file proof of publication notice of public hearing on the 5 Sullivan Brothers Convention Center Exhibition Hall ceiling renovation project.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The hearing is now open. Is there anyone, I guess Tim Jameson is here. Is there anyone that would like to comment on this, or anyone on the telephone like to make comments? Going a second time?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to close the hearing.
Second. Second.
Motion has been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Morrissey.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution confirming approval of plans, specifications, form of contract, et cetera, and authorizing to proceed.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Council, any questions? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Amos? Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to receive, file, and instruct city clerk to read bids and refer to building department for review.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Madam Clerk?
All right, our first bidder was Failer Hurley Construction of Waterloo, Iowa. They provided 5% security. Their bid amount was $980,000. Our second bidder was Cardinal Construction of Waterloo, Iowa. They provided 5% security. Their bid amount was $954,000. Our third bidder was Don Gardner Construction of Waterloo, Iowa. They provided 5% security. Their bid amount was $1,044,400. Our fourth bidder was Peterson Construction Corp. Of Waterloo, Iowa. They provided 5% security. Their bid amount was $939,810. Our next bidder was Henkel Construction Company of Mason City, Iowa. They provided 5% security. Their bid amount was $970,900. And our final bidder was Woodruff Construction of Waterloo, Iowa. They provided 5% security. Their bid amount was $999,000.
What was the bid estimate for that?
I do not have an estimate for that project.
All right.
I'm looking for an early one right now. I believe it was $837,650.
Okay. All right. Can someone take number 3, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Amos.
yes, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file proof of publication of public hearing, and that is for the 5 Sullivan Brothers Convention Center Skywalk Improvements Project. Second.
That motion has been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this particular item? Going a second time.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to close the hearing. Second.
The motion has been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution confirming approval of plan specifications, form of contract, et cetera, and authorizing to proceed. Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Council, questions? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
And Mr. Amos?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to receive, file, and instruct city clerk to read bids and refer to building department for review. Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Is that a roll call? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
All right, we had 3 bidders. Our first was Cardinal Construction of Waterloo, Iowa. They provided 5% security. Their bid amount was $214,000. Our second bidder was Woodruff Construction of Waterloo, Iowa. They provided 5% security. Their bid amount was $199,890. And our final bidder was Henkel Construction of Mason City, Iowa. They provided 5% security. And their bid amount was $249,800.
Any estimate on that one?
No estimate.
No, the estimate on that one was 200,000.
All right. Could someone take 4, 5, 4? Well, let's take them individually. Somebody take number 4.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
number 4 is a resolution issuing a moratorium to close due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Second.
The motion has been.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
there's so much background noise and interference I can hardly hear.
She took number 4 and she moved that we approve a resolution issuing a moratorium on collecting fees from businesses ordered to close by the governor of the state of Iowa due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was seconded.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I want to explain what was going on this week with this. I got together with Kelly and we talked about the fees and went over fee structure in the departments, and it comes down to this. It's really basically the FOG fee, the fats, oils, and grease. That's all that one fee, and inspection, and the fire inspection. Those are basically the two fees that this will affect. Now, if you'd like to see them in the print, that's fine. Recommend that we put it at the bottom, in number 2 at the bottom, where it says, that effective May 5th, 2020, a moratorium is enacted on collecting fog and fire inspection fees from businesses. Simple addition of that phrase, fees. Every, if you want to call it, is done by business and do right now, even at fees.
City Council.
I know that, but what are they talking about?
She's suggesting they waive the inspections for fog inspections and something else for rest.
Oh,
Doris, you gotta be quiet.
Who is that?
I think that's for Silver. Anyway,
Like 137.
I hope you all support this. It's a small way that we can help our businesses, and it does not forgive any of these fees. It just gives them a chance to catch their breath and gives them, after they're allowed to open, to pay them. That's my hope.
All right, thank you. Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this item? Forrest or anyone, would you like to comment?
No.
You said no?
No, thank you.
All right. Council, questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Bozen?
my first comment would ask Marty to back away from the mic with those papers, because none of us can hear anything that's going on as he's here.
Yeah, Mr. Paper.
I would appreciate it. My second comment on this, and what Mrs. Klein is trying to do here. I have not heard from one business outside of the one that contacted Klein about this. and truly believe we should be waiving fire inspection fees. I'll wait for the train here.
Yeah.
This is,
I believe this is going to be in 2 weeks. Governor's going to tell it, and I think it's going to be a moot point. And we don't have set up to apply. But by the time we get everything up and running and try to have a functioning program, like I said, I believe the whole thing's going to be over, and we're going to square one and be open.
all right. Other comments? All right, Madam Clerk, roll call vote on the resolution on collecting fees from businesses.
Mrs. Klein? Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
No.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Madam Clerk, I have been totally unable to understand any of this discussion. I don't even know what was said, Kelly. I couldn't hear Mr. Bozen. I barely could hear Miss Klein. I'm in a room all by myself, but there's so much background noise that I don't even know for sure what we're voting on other than what the mayor had repeated.
We are voting on item number 4.
And
Well, I didn't even get a chance to talk. You know, and I know this system is got its limitations, but when you can't eat, when a person who's expected to vote can't even hear what's being talked about because of background noise, and then a person's not able to talk or get in a word because of the background noise, I don't know how to vote on this, quite frankly. So I'll just say no. Go ahead.
okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Morrissey. I didn't know you wanted to comment or were having difficulty, but just for clarification, Mrs. Klein indicated that this only relates to the fog fee and the fire inspection, of waiving off those fees for a little while. So that's the portion she was talking about.
Is that, but Mr. Mayor, the question I would ask is that in writing?
No.
That's someplace in writing on the resolution we're passing?
Oh, I thought
Did anybody make
that's
an
the motion she
amendment
made.
to the resolution, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I guess you are correct. That is not in there. I thought I'd heard her say the fog inspection and fire inspection. So,
Well, I'm not voting on anything just because somebody says they want to include that. That's table talk. That's not. So I just, point of order, what are we voting on? What exactly are we voting on? Are we voting
on number
something
4.
that's in writing, or are we voting on something that's been verbally communicated that we don't see in writing?
Well, I guess in that case, it was voted on number 4 in its entirety.
As far as the entirety being what, Mr. Mayor?
A resolution issuing a moratorium on collecting fees from businesses ordered to close by the governor of the state of Iowa due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
And so the restriction that I heard being mentioned to only have it apply to a couple of things is not part of this resolution?
No.
Well, then
Mrs. Klein,
Mayor,
let me ask Mrs. Klein for clarification for your question. Mrs. Klein?
As I mentioned at the beginning, that after talking with Kelly a few times, we defined it down to recognizing only 2 fees were going to be impacted by this, and it was the fog fee, fats, oils, and grease, and the fire fee. And then I mentioned that if you preferred, we could put that in there. No one seems on that preference, and we are in the middle of a vote. And I don't think to anyone here, but we all choose to be present at this meeting in the manner that is comfortable for us. But it is clear that those on Zoom are hearing more and seeing more and understanding faster. So as much as I have empathy for someone on the phone that is having a difficult time, it's a personal choice. So I recommend we go on with the vote.
So let me ask you a question.
Mr. Mayor?
Let me ask you a question. So if we come back next week, someone can enter an amendment to have that include fog and fire, right?
Yeah.
That could be added.
Well, after tonight, unless you veto this, it's in effect. So it would have to be a different resolution.
So I would have to go.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
could we just ask the councilperson from Ward 1, we introduce this, to rewrite it and submit it next week so that it's clear what we're voting on?
It's too
already
late.
voted.
It's too late. We've had 6 votes already, which is enough to pass it.
Yeah, at this point, everybody's voted on this resolution. So at this
It's not-
point,
But I
Isn't
can
it?
come back next week and veto so that we can have the amendments in there for the fog and fire so we know specifically what we're talking about.
Well, okay, so have you
If you're on the
tallied any
if you're on the
votes yet?
prevailing side, can't that be brought back?
you can do all kinds of things.
If you're on the prevailing side, you can bring it back next week.
Okay, so then I guess with this discussion, my vote will be yes.
All right, thank you. All right, number 5.
Mr. Mayor,
I have a question, Mr. Mayor, before we move on. Do we get to change our vote?
No.
After a little discussion during our vote, change it and go another way? This is so off base, this vote.
Which one is this vote?
I so clearly heard our colleague vote no. And then we engaged in this conversation, which we never engage in during votes. And now a vote change.
I
Is
thought
this a
Mr.
pattern?
Mayor,
number 5.
Mayor,
End of discussion. Number 5.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution urging the governor of the state of Iowa to prorate license fees on all 12-month liquor licenses.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Discussion. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think I asked this question before, but I don't know if I got an answer that made me understand. How much of that liquor license comes to Waterloo?
Kelly.
We get a portion of the liquor license. I don't have the number offhand, but it varies based on the fee or the duration of the license. I don't have the number in front of me.
Is it a percentage?
Yeah, the city gets a share of the fee. I just don't have that dollar amount in front of me at this moment.
Okay, I'm sorry, I asked that question last week, so I'm sorry that I haven't got an answer yet.
I apologize, Mrs. Jewin.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I have a comment about item number 5. I wondered why we're going this route and we didn't just encourage voters to contact their state representatives. This should come through them, in my opinion. And I can't support it for that reason. I'm just always uncomfortable with wagging my finger at our state capitol like that.
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Morrissey.
Yeah, surprise, surprise, that the councilperson Ward 1 will be opposed
I
to anything
Come
I
on,
say.
can we just vote?
But
I mean, you
I
got
would
the
like
votes,
to
just
add,
vote.
Mr. Mayor.
Gosh.
Mr. Mayor.
please ask him to be more respectful. I'm trying to
Quiet,
be
let him
respectful.
finish his point and let's move on to the next issue. Come on, Mr. Morrissey, finish up. Keep the personal stuff. Let's finish up and go.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do here, sir.
Yes, sir.
And what I wanted to add was that I had changed the last paragraph of that resolution to read that the council respectfully directs the mayor, that Mayor Quentin Hart urged the governor through verbal communication to prorate 12-month liquor license fees from the sign bars and restaurants were ordered closed and until such time that the same.
Hey, Mr. Morrissey, Mr. Morrissey, Mr. Morrissey, hold on one second.
Pardon?
Who was that in the background?
And that's what I've been getting all the time. That's why I could not hear number 4 at all. There's so much background. It's like somebody's shuffling cards or something.
Yeah, I was able to hear at that time. So, Mr. Morrissey, yours is having me reach out to the governor's office to talk about fees. And if you like, at the same time, I can reach out to our legislature so I can make everybody happy.
Yes, that would be great.
Thank you, sir.
So I just wanted to add that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Foyce,
Yes.
Mr. Greider,
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin,
Yes.
Mr. Bozen,
Yes.
Mr. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey,
Yes.
Mrs. Klein.
No,
All right, thank you. 6, 7, and 8.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Amos.
Number 6 is a resolution approving the Iowa Contaminated Site Environmental Covenant with Chamberlain Manufacturing Corporation, United States Environmental Protection Agency for property located at 550 Esther Street and authorizing the mayor to execute said document. Number 7 is a resolution rejecting the bid of WRH Inc. of Amana, Iowa in the amount of $6,292,360 in conjunction with fiscal year 2020 sanitary sewer gate well repairs contract number 951. And next is a resolution approving city-state funding agreement with the Iowa Department of Transportation for RISE funding in the amount of $3,196,984 in conjunction with the fiscal year 2021 Support Road Hess Road Improvements Phase 1 contract number 1016 with city matching funds of $3,196,984 and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute said document. Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Questions about these 3 items?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Amos.
I have a question about the number 6 with the Chamberlain Manufacturing. I know, that's been an ongoing thing as far as getting that site cleaned up. What does this covenant actually do? I see the information in it, but I'm just kind of curious as to what the purpose of this covenant is. Is it something that the city is required to do, or is there a reason we're doing it?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Amos. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. Martin Peterson, Legal Department. Mr. Amos, this is a 14-page document that is fairly standard with regard to environmental cleanups. It's required by the Environmental Protection Agency from the federal government. We will sign it, as will Chamberlain. And essentially, an environmental covenant binds us and every future user with regard to how this land is used. And it talks about disturbing soil and construction notices. And it also talks about vapors if there's ever a basement put in. And we've worked closely with our attorney, Steve Pace, from the Shuttleworth firm in Cedar Rapids in negotiating this. Essentially, if anyone's going to disturb deeper than 18 inches of depth in the soil, they have to get EPA approval for doing that. And I might add that except for 5 various sizes rectangles on this property, all of the superficial soil or the top layer of soil is or will be cleaned to residential standards, and that's on the insistence of the mayor and also Noel Anderson from the planning department. And so this document, anytime there's an environmental cleanup, EPA insists that this be recorded with the county recorder, binding future users and just making everyone aware that this at one time and remains a hazardous waste site that's in the process of being cleaned. It doesn't at all have to do with the cleaning of the groundwater, which is ongoing in and around this area with the various wells. This only relates to the property owned by the city that is the former site.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Bozen.
I have a question on 6 and on 8. And on question number 6, I read that covenant and everything we have to do in the future. My question is that any department that what is our future, that land, and what can we use it for?
We've been in discussions with regard to that. Currently, the general direction of our conversations are heading into a recreational or environmental type use. We've discussed certain pollinator scenarios where there's a natural habitat planted, incorporating trails possibly, as well as other recreational uses, but nothing's been put any further other than discussion.
Thank you.
You had a question about number 8, Mr. Bozen?
Sure. This might be a question for Noel or Jamie, but have we identified a funding source for our match for the $3,196,000 for that RISE grant?
Noel Anderson, Community Planning Development Director. May the 4th be with you. We have been working with Michelle on this to try and figure out the city's best way forward. Obviously, we're working at expanding and connecting the 2 tips of the San Martin tip and the Crossroads tip for the development of the theme park project overall. We moving ahead with the $11 million bond expenditure as outlined in the CIP. As we look at the timing of this and trying to stay ahead of the theme park opening, and then with the announcement just recently of the RISE funding, so we know what that amount is from the state, we would be recommending to bond $2 million to cover this expense moving ahead, and then the TIF funds can also help with that.
So my question would be, if we're going to bond and if we're going to use TIF funds, when does that Crossroads TIF expire, and will you, if it's expiring soon, will you be coming back before the council to extend it?
The Crossroads TIF was recently redone to try and reset the Crossroads Center amount, so it should have about 20 years, 19 or 20 years at this point, since I think we just reset it last year or a year and a half ago. And so we'll continue to look at that in terms of how the land develops out there. If we need to reset that again anytime soon, or if we do the merger, it may reset portions of that and portions of the San Martin to do that. Essentially, we'll be resetting the vacant land that hasn't been developed yet. The city would still see a rise with the reset if that land value has gone in to go into the general fund. And then, of course, the buildings and the construction, the projects that have already been built out there would not be reset, so they'd be on the original 20-year time frame, wherever that's at, for both the 2 TIF districts to come out eventually.
So do you know the time? Do you know the set time on the ones that won't be coming out?
I can get that information to you. There's different areas in each one, so we'd have to get you a map, and you can show you the different areas and which buildings are in which areas.
That'd be great. Thank you.
No, does everyone know about this RISE funding we just received?
So this RISE funding was coming. It's kind of exciting. The DOT does a couple of visits every year with the DOT Commission. They were set to come to Waterloo at the Marriott, I believe, at least for the first time in the last 20 years. So we were excited about that. Then, of course, the COVID situation happened, so it was a virtual meeting that the mayor and Intercog staff and myself were able to do a small presentation on all the great projects with Highway 63 and University and things that we're doing here with the RISE projects in Waterloo to the DOT Commission. They did announce to us that on that agenda, which was just a couple weeks ago, that we would be getting this RISE money for the Shawless Road project that Jamie and his staff and the HR Green staff and Bill Boston staff have all been working on solutions for this portion of Shawless Road. This is the first time we've used the RISE tourism program, so we're very happy with the result of them coming back and funding 50%. This will work to, and Jamie can add in things here if I miss them, but this will work to improve the lanes out there, expand those for the turns expected with the theme park, but also solve the water problem that happens out there for flooding of the road at times.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Mrs. Jewin, you need to take your phone
I'm
up.
sorry. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
All right, thank you. 9, 10, and 11, please.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor.
Who was that first person?
Greider.
Mr. Greider or Mr. Foyce? Was that you?
It was me,
Oh,
yes.
shoot.
All right. I'd like to make a motion for a resolution approving a professional services agreement with MMS Consultants, Inc. of Iowa City, Iowa, in an amount not to exceed $105,000 in conjunction with the fiscal year 2020 Newell Street RISE project contract number 991 and authorizing the mayor to execute said document. 10 is a resolution approving the professional services agreement with AECom of Waterloo, Iowa, in an amount not to exceed $59,900 in conjunction with water main improvements near the Waterloo Regional Airport and authorizing the mayor to execute said document. And number 11 is a resolution approving a farm lease agreement with Luke Weston to farm approximately 67.83 acres of land for the 2020 growing season, generally located near the northeast corner of Independence Avenue and Northeast Drive in the amount of $215 per acre for a total yearly payment of $14,583.45 and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute said document.
Second.
That motion has been made with the proper second. Council questions, anyone? Let me see. Wait. Yeah, council? Madam Clerk?
Mrs. Jewin?
Your phone is on mute, Miss Jewin.
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
And Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Right, thank you. 12 and 13, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Morrissey.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving a variance to the requirements of the subdivision ordinance in section 11-1-13 variances relating to the approval of the preliminary plat of Paradise Estates Addition, subject to the condition that any final plat or final plats for any portion of the approved preliminary plat of Paradise Estates Addition submitted for approval on or prior to May 14, 2022 shall be subject to any new zoning restrictions or subdivision regulations adopted by the city of Waterloo prior to submittal of any such final plat for any portion of said area. And next is a resolution approving an early access agreement with 4FI Waterloo LLC to begin certain activities in preparation for the development of the site east of 1994 Newell Street and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute said document.
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morrissey. Counselor, I think we have Mr. Rick Morris to speak on item number 12. So, Mr. Morris.
Hello, Mayor and council members. How are you tonight?
Excellent.
Paradise Estates preliminary plat occurred a couple of years ago, and a year ago, Mr. Anderson approached me as the one-year period for a final plat of a portion of it was coming up, and he had not secured that, period. We filed a variance at that time to get another year. We have met with certain developers to assist Mr. Anderson in the development of this property, period. Mr. Anderson, as you might be aware, owns a number of properties around town and has engaged in various forms of development, both individually, but a project of this nature, he's looking for some considerable assistance for people, or from people who are regularly engaged in the development of residential property areas. This property is surrounding Orange School, and in fact, it was with his blessing that property was conveyed off to the school board so that the new Orange School could have been built a few years ago, period. There have been some improvements done with respect to that property with the city's considerable help so that there would be water and sewer to a good portion of it, but there are other areas that would need some assistance that a developer would either need to put in itself or would be back in front of the city council or the planning and zoning people saying, hey, could we get some help with this or that? So at this time, we don't have a particular final plat selected that we could present so that it would kind of come in under the 1 year additional wire that we had. And so because of the coronavirus, I went ahead, discussed it with the members of the city staff and P&Z about getting a 2-year window. I think Mr. Anderson is looking at possibly building his own house out there, and with it, several lots around that would get this project moving. He has a tract, I believe it's tract A in the development that he has set aside when this preliminary plat was approved a couple of years ago so that he could build his own house there. I think he's still thinking of that, but again, I think he is looking for help with developers that we know in this area that have come before the city council and other city councils in the Cedar Valley to do larger scale developments like this is. It's 128 acres, so there would be a lot of potential housing there of varying sizes and expense. So when we initially approached this a year ago and I was talking with developers, they had an interest in the area closest to the school, which, as everyone might imagine, would be maybe the more attractive lots for getting a project going, since they would be closer to schools, would have sidewalks for the children that would be going to the school to be able to walk on to get there. Similar to what's going on at the Arbors up in Cedar Falls, if you will, with the new grade school up there. So as you might know already, these developers kind of have their own projects going, and so to get a stake in Mr. Anderson's would require them to kind of determine how it fits into their plans and at what time, because they've got their own areas of land within the Cedar Valley that they're developing for their own future housing projects. So that's a little bit of the conundrum that we're in, is in meeting with them. There are other developers that maybe don't grab such a large piece of property and develop it over a period of many years at, 10 to 15 acres at a time, that would be interested in maybe a few lots here and there. So that is kind of our approach at this time, and that is to go to builders that would be interested in taking some of these lots, though Mr. Anderson is going to have to, put in the streets and the services and so forth to do that. And so that, as we all know, requires a tremendous amount of money. And once you get going, you want to be able to keep going so that you can recoup some of those costs as you begin to develop and sell more lots. So that's why we're asking for a 2-year period, so that we've got an opportunity. Approaching and discussing these matters with people, as you might imagine, isn't as easy as it was, 3 or 4 months ago. And then in the wintertime, people are a little cool as far as saying, yeah, I'm willing to jump into that project. So as with a lot of things, this one hasn't progressed as quickly or as fast as probably all would like, but I think he's got a good vision there. I think he's got a good plan, and it just needs some other attention by those that are in the residential housing building market to assist him with it. This isn't the kind of thing that he does on a regular basis. He likes to develop property, but some of them have been more commercial in nature, or housing units kind of out by Hawkeye Community College. So that's why we're asking for a 2-year extension. Our intent after this is for him and I, through whatever fashion we can meet, to discuss and try and lay out, a plan for contact with people that would have an interest in pairing with him to at least get that first final plat off the ground, so that we wouldn't have to continue to come back to the city council to extend the original preliminary plat.
All right, thank you. Council, anyone have any questions on 12 before
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
But Jonathan, I'm sorry.
No problem. So I represent this area as part of Ward 2. So I guess I just have a couple of quick questions. I'm not in development, but I guess when this, and I wasn't on the council when all this originally went down, I guess my first question is, wouldn't we know that the developer would need more support? Or wouldn't that become apparent throughout the process, especially after asking for an extension last year, which I see was granted looking back at council notes last May? My other question is I would like to know what the legwork is. Like, are we 50% there in terms of what we need in talking to developers? Are we 75%? Are we 5%? Because my concern is, and perhaps I'm jaded by teaching school children, but I have concerns just that the legwork isn't done, and we're being asked for something, and then 2 years from now we'll be asked for something again, with a development that has been met with mixed opinions in the neighborhood. So those are my two questions of why didn't we foresee this earlier, and then how far are we in the process of making sure that in May of 2022 we are not back at extending this preliminary plat again?
All right, Noel, you got any answers on that, or is that for the the developer, or
Whoever can answer it.
can anyone quickly answer that for him?
I don't know, Rick, if you want to answer that, or I can answer from a staff perspective. Obviously, Mr. Anderson has done other developments in the community, so we think that he is aware of or has the ability to do the project. I think, like Mr. Morris said, it's probably just a matter of him probably putting the pieces together of how to start this, where to start this. It is the largest subdivision we've seen platted at one time in the city of Waterloo. So obviously we're supportive of seeing that and supporting the new school out there. And this is just a step that allows them a little bit more flexibility in the process. But other than that, I think Mr. Morris, if he has more answers on the exact timing that they're looking at.
My only other comment would maybe be to Mr. Anderson's health. He was in the hospital for a while. He had some major surgery and things of that nature. He's a guy about town, as many of you know, but he's also a gentleman who is getting along in years like we all are every year, and so his efforts in this area, I guess with all due respect, I was not involved in the preliminary plat process of getting that approved by the city in 2018. Mr. Anderson approached me a year ago to see about assisting him in getting this first extension, and we then began discussions that were going on through the fall with people in this area that have done large-scale developments without getting into specific names, because they are other people that we're associated with as clients of our office. And again, as I mentioned, they're involved in their own projects within the Cedar Valley, and they're trying to get those done. They would be willing to participate in this. It's just the matter of the timing. And so they had no involvement when the preliminary plat was done, realized the importance of being able to get that first plat underway, as does Mr. Anderson. So it's not like we got it approved last year and just sat on our haunches. I had several meetings in my office. Mr. Anderson then got injured. We couldn't, he fell and we couldn't do anything for a while. Winter came, and here we are again. A year can pass pretty fast. So it's not as though we pass it and then throw it in the file and, oh gosh, it's April again, time to get that extension. So with all due respect, there is a concerted effort to get this going. I think it would behoove the city to want this development around this school rather than it kind of sitting out there like the little schoolhouse on the prairie without the development that could bring other tax dollars and that feeling of having a neighborhood school in that part of our Cedar Valley area.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, I had registered with the clerk of courts to speak on this issue.
Oh yeah, this for 12. Okay. Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Manning. I had first volunteered for Mr. Anderson 3 years ago in February of 2017 on this project. And we worked through several things, including school meetings with the Orange community area, and had the Waterworks conduct a study, the Waterloo Waterworks, and they said that yes, Orange Township, as it's frequently referred to, is one of the highest areas in Waterloo, and so the water pressure is not good for the existing residents there. But if there was going to be an additional construction, they would put in, tentatively, this was all in the planning stage, but tentatively put in a lift station to provide water to the Orange Township people at the pressure that other people in Waterloo have. They have one of the worst water pressures, and that's always been a complaint of the people that lived out there. So the Waterworks was excited to see this development. That happened 2.5 years ago, that we worked on that. I worked with Mr. Anderson to further bring this along. In addition to the school meetings, we had several preliminary plat meetings and preliminary conferences with planning and zoning and formally with the city council. In the fall of 2017, Buzz said, well, I want to work with partners on this. I don't want to do this all myself. And so recognizing that, he gave me some names that he wanted to know if they'd be interested. I had my own contacts, contacted them, and they were not interested in working with Mr. Anderson. And this continued to be an objection, even though we moved forward and presented the preliminary plat in the spring of 2018. At that point, it was approved, and I'd even prepared for the planning team that I was a member of to look at how many houses we could have. By May 1st of 2020, which was last Friday, we had projected that there would be between 25 and 35 houses either constructed and occupied or under construction as of May 1st of this year. The continual objection for the last 2+ years has been that Mr. Anderson wants to find a partner and has not been able to find a partner. Mr. Morris, I'm not sure when he was ill, but I saw him at the December 31st party that he had at Gallagher Bluedorn, and he was, as the rest of us were, dancing up and having a great time there. So I'm not sure if he was previously injured, what has happened from December until today.
But in my personal opinion, this seems it has taken way too long. This is critical to Waterloo, to the growth that many people have said we need in Waterloo. I've been a Cedar Valley resident all my life. I've encouraged housing in the entire Cedar Valley, from Gilbertville, Waverly, Waterloo, Cedar Falls, Dyke, for 32 years, financing real estate projects, and then 5 years as the executive officer for the Waterloo Home Builders Association of the Cedar Valley. And there are contractors clamoring to have lots to build on. There's not been one shovel of dirt turned out there in the last 3 years. Even though the preliminary plat was approved 2 years ago, the waterworks were on board. And quite frankly, that brought a lot of the residents that live in Orange Township were excited about potentially having better water pressure in their own houses as this project moved forward. I don't know what benefit it does to delay this another 2 years. I wish that Mr. Anderson would build his own house and then not say to the other developers that he wants to control what's happening. When he told me that, the people I talked with for him said, we're not entering that type of an agreement where somebody else makes the decisions and we're a silent partner on it.
So Mr.
I've been very disappointed at how slow this has been, and have approached Mr. Anderson about it enough times where he won't see me any longer. And that's to the extent of what my lawyers have advised me that I can say about this matter.
So Mr. Noel, right now, this is Mr. Anderson's property, right?
That is correct.
So he wants additional time to try to put the pieces together on his property to put housing, which will go from agricultural to residential, right? Or am I not seeing something?
So the property is properly rezoned. The process tonight, if not approved, and then he would want to move ahead with some platting of the lots, it would have to go back to the Planning Commission for approval of the preliminary and final plat. If the council approves the extension tonight to move ahead in the future, then he would just need to do a final plat of the area being developed at council level.
This is his property though, right?
That is correct.
All right. Council, anything else?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
First, I don't remember back in 2018 that we were putting the streets in, number one. Also, when that came before the council in 2018, there were a number, that council chamber was full with people objecting to it. Those people have been in limbo for 2 years, not knowing what's going to happen in that area. And we extended it a year. And now we're being asked to extend it another 2 years for those people out in that Orange Township to be in limbo, not knowing what's going to happen and if this development's going to go on. And personally, I would be in favor of denying this extension. And then when Mr. Anderson or his developers put this all back together again and actually have a project that they can start to come and go from inception to completion, come back for planning and zoning. They've already got the preliminary plat done. Bring the final plat before council. Let the neighborhood come out and speak to this again and let this council decide at that time.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Rick Morris again. I guess my only thought is it sounds like you want to delay this project and maybe not even see it happen by trying to delay, cross this off the list of things that would get approved tonight, and then go back to the drawing board. I think a lot of time, money, and energy was spent by a lot of people, both for and against this process. Again, before my time, back in 17 and 18, to get it to where it was. So to just toss it off and deny it and not allow it happen doesn't sound very pro-development to me by the city of Waterloo that has for years been crying for housing development, and now has an opportunity to give a developer who, as you've said a couple of times, Mr. Mayor, owns this 128 acres and worked graciously with the city and with the school board so that Orange School could be built there, to just cast it aside because he can't get it done in a year. I think that would be very short-sighted by the city council, to be honest, and would send the wrong message to developers as far as wanting to take on a big project to bring more residential development to the city of Waterloo, and with that, the attendant tax dollars that accompany it. So, you know, if you want to do something in a couple of years, you know, I guess that would be the right of the people that sit on the council and the mayor and the staff at that time. But I think it would be, you know, not a very good sign or direction for the city to toss this project with a negative vote. We're respectfully requesting, pursuant to the variance guidelines that are in the city code, to allow another 2 years to get this kind of off the ground. As Mr. Manning said, well before I was involved, that Mr. Anderson was talking to this developer and that developer, and he, I think, has realized that his role in this has to be limited to maybe to what he's looking to do for his house. I don't think, and there was a comment made that we were looking for the city to put in any streets. I didn't mention that in my speaking, and so if there's some document there that ties the city into putting streets in, I'm not familiar with that. I'm not aware of it. So I wasn't sure what the gentleman was referring to when he made that comment. So Mr. Anderson realizes he's got to get going on this. Mr. Manning said something about Mr. Anderson doing this or that. I saw Mr. Anderson in a cast last fall. He couldn't move. We couldn't do some of the things that we wanted to do with respect to going around and seeing some of the developments that the other developers had. So I wasn't with him like Mr. Manning was on New Year's Eve, but Mr. Anderson certainly had surgery and was in a cast when I saw him last fall. So
let's just say, Mr. Rick, let's just say we'll take your word for it. But you know, and speaking in generalization from all of us, that you know, health reasons were a reason why some parts of this didn't proceed. We'll just take your word for it. The severity of what Mr. Anderson has gone through, let's not make that too public. You know, HIPAA or something. I don't know what rules it are. But let me ask. So I think one challenge maybe that folks may have had. I can't speak for every. I'll get her in a second. One problem that folks may have is that they just haven't heard in so long, or there hadn't been an update to say this was taking place or this was happening, to kind of let them know exactly where the project is at, and also with the residents to kind of, I think it was mentioned, kind of left them in a little bit of suspense, wondering what's going to happen. So just say, before I go to Mrs. Klein, just say, for instance, council says we may do a year or we may do 2 years. What type of communication can the residents, now that you said you're involved, can the residents and council members expect? And after that, I want to go to Mrs. Klein.
Well, I think he's got to have a commitment with others that are in the residential housing development area that they will assist him with respect to a particular area. As I mentioned, when I spoke with him last on this, he was thinking of building his own house there as a way to kind of kickstart some development down there and the lots that would adjoin the property that he had set aside for himself. So that would be what I would envision happening. And there are developers that will take lots on, but if you know, it's going to be who's going to be in charge. Is it going to be Mr. Anderson, or is it going to be he's willing to sell off a portion of it for somebody else to develop it in accordance with the preliminary plat and what would be good development in that area for the school and for housing.
So
There's so many acres there that I've been involved where one developer's working on one end of a parcel of this size and one developer's working on the other end because part of it got sold off. So
we can
all avenues are on the table. I guess I'm not familiar with developers giving press releases or conferences on what's happening, and I don't think that's what you're asking for, Mr. Mayor. But
I'm not asking.
Until we get it,
I'm not asking for that. What I'm saying is, you're hearing from council members that have been supportive of the project previously, just wanting to have some type of idea. We have, like we had a couple one developer for sure, who comes back with a yearly update on projects and properties that he has to kind of give us an idea of where they're at. So folks want to know what's going on in my Al Green voice. They want to know what's happening right now, what's going on. But Mrs. Klein, yes.
Yeah, as I've been listening to everyone, just to clarify for me, I'm understanding that Orange School exists where it's located now because of some generosity from Mr. Anderson, and that this is his private property. And contrary to one of the speakers said, developers are not lined up to build on his property. It's his property. It's not like it's public land that we have a timeline that we have to meet. It's his land. And we have approved the idea of a neighborhood out there, and no matter what he does, whether it's this year, next year, or the year after, he has to come back and submit the final plat. So I don't see why we're hesitating to do this. We don't own that land. We can't turn it over to anyone else or use it for any other purpose. So I would just hate to punish someone who has been charitable to that beautiful school out there when it's dealing with his own property.
Oh, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I remember this particular development specifically as far as prior to it even coming to the council at the planning, programming, and zoning meeting. A lot of residents in that area had a lot of complaints as far as concerns. And I remember Mr. Anderson taking all of those concerns into consideration when he was moving forward with the development. And I just have a real concern with us not going ahead and giving him the time that he needs to continue on with the development because, realistically, I remember there were issues and things that the concerns of the citizens, and those citizens did end up, I guess, agreeing to some of the things that they probably weren't in total agreement with. But for me, it's not making any sense to turn this down and not give him more time if he needs it. What else is going to happen with the land? So for me, I'm going to vote yes on it. I'm going to support it.
Thank you, Mr.
Point
Amos.
of clarification, can I add one thing, Mr. Mayor?
No, sir. Who else do we have? Council?
For the record, he sold the property to Orange School. He did not give it to Orange School. He sold it for $15,000 an acre.
All right. Mr. Manning, the questions that folks had were directly for Ms. Landon. So, Noel, do you want to clarify on who gave or sold the property to Orange School?
So this is Noel. Mr. Anderson did sell the land to Orange School for its development. He was flexible in working with Orange School for the layout of that to try and have housing on 3 different sides versus putting the school at the corner, as we were trying to gain more residential structures directly abutting the new elementary school.
All right. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Mayor, one of the questions I got is why 2 years? Why not an extension for 6 months? Being on council when this all came up and listening to the comments that were made by the residents in the area out there and listening to all the back and forth about traffic studies, traffic issues, about the water issues. And being as that this first was around in 2017 and we're now at 2020, if we've given, really it's 2 years, not 1 year, and we're going out into allowing for 4 years on something that the residents out there were looking at, that the city was looking at. And the part about this that bothers me is something that I see happening, and that is where the city, where the officials within the city, with the council's approval and the mayor's approval, we sign off on agreements that include deadlines and things to be done that then are not met. And I have a difficult time with that one when you make a contract with somebody that you don't live up to that and you come back and you keep on trying to redo it. And sometimes you even ask for more than what you did in the first place. And I'm not saying that has anything to do with this, but it's just another example of a contract that was made, deadlines were made, and now we as a council are asked to approve that. And as one of the prior speakers had mentioned, the residents out there are waiting and have been waiting to see what is going to happen out there. And my understanding now is that if you drive by there, you're going to see that area out there is being, the ground's being turned over probably for farming. So when we're supposed to have some houses on there by now. I'm torn with this one because I know it's private land and Mr. Anderson has a right to do with his land what he wishes. But at the same time, I think he should be living up to the agreements that he made with the city that are required by our ordinances.
All right. Yeah, I don't vote, but I'm kind of torn too in the fact that, with regards to housing and taxable value and the fact that right now we're moving into an era of, with decreased fees potentially over this year. So I'm kind of caught in a conundrum, but I don't vote. You all vote. And I don't know if there's some medium or ways to meet in the middle again. But I think before I go to Mr. Bozen, is there anyone that didn't speak yet on council that would like to speak?
Mr. Mayor?
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question in there, Mr. Mayor, about why this extension cannot be for like 6 months or a year. Why are we extending it out to 2 years? That was my initial question, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Mr. Rick or Noel, 2 years instead of 1 year, or I'll even doing a benchmark of the plat laid for the house or something there. But could either one of you comment on that before I go to Mrs. Jewin?
Mr. Mayor, this is Rick Morris. I brought it up specifically with Tim, Andera, and Noel because I wanted to make sure, given the environment that we're operating under, had we had a normal winter and spring, I'd probably be asking for 1 year. But if I've not heard your council meeting right, you've been talking about the pandemic and about every vote that's come up, other than letting out contracts and so forth. To sit down with people, to meet with people face to face isn't happening. To do all this stuff remotely or with Zoom or with virtual meetings, isn't as easy as sitting out there and going through it with somebody, I guess, on the land, which can be done and so forth. But you need people that are willing to commit, and you need time to give them the ideas to go ahead with it. So I'm trying to make this a success, not just, hey, okay, you know, we got 6 months. We got a dead run. Let's see if we can get to 6 months. And then be knocking on the door, you know, a week before Thanksgiving saying, gosh, we didn't make it. So can we get another 6 months? You know, I think if you're for the city of Waterloo and you're for housing in Waterloo, you want to see this thing succeed rather than having it hamstrung just because of some timing. Yeah, we're asking for 2 years. Had I known a year ago what I was doing at that time, that we weren't going to be moving as quickly as I thought we would, or with the issues that we've got just in the national and world economies, including the local economies, I'd have probably asked for 2 years then. I went through the variance. There's nothing that says it can't be 2 years. I'm respectfully, through Mr. Anderson, asking for 2 years to get this project going and to get it going right. Not to be thinking every day, oh, well, we've got a countdown. We've got to cross another day off the calendar because we're on a, you know, is this going to be a 100-yard dash, or is this going to be more like a, you know, a 10,000 meter run or something along those lines? I think you want it done. You want it done right. You want it to be something that Waterloo can be proud of, and so does Mr. Anderson. You know, he grew up here, and he's trying to develop this just like he has other properties in town.
Right. Mrs. Jewin, and then I haven't forgotten about you, Mr. Bozen.
Yeah, let me say that I'm disappointed. I remember when this all came up in 2018 and the controversy that resulted in the numerous meetings we had with the residents and how troubling it was to everyone. We went through all that, and I'm surprised to know that at that time, Mr. Anderson didn't already have a partner picked out. If he had determined that he had to have someone that was more familiar with residential development, I'm surprised he didn't have that identified before we went through all that controversy, so that he knew that as soon as that was approved, we could hit the ground running. And then to hear that there are some developers that would be glad to buy some lots out there, but that Mr. Anderson is saying that the sale would still require that he gets to call the shots. I can understand why that would be something less than attractive for any other developers. So I'm willing to maybe give him a little more time, but I gotta say that I'm really disappointed that he didn't think all this out in advance. The other question to you, Mr. Morris, I know you've been involved in covenants before. Could not Mr. Anderson put a covenant on all of that land and then still sell it out with the requirement that the covenants remain? If that's his concern, that he wants it developed in a certain way, couldn't he do it by virtue of covenants?
Well, if you're going to put covenants in, Ms. Juan, you're going to have to do it in conjunction with the deed of dedication. And a deed of dedication is one of the documents for a final plat.
Okay.
And as we're requesting 2 more years to get that final plat going, those covenants haven't been developed yet to be able to put before anybody, the P&Z, or respectfully to you and the other members of the city council to take a look at what's being done there. You're familiar with the work that I've done out at Audubon Park for many years and in other parts of the town. So, you know, we only try and do it the right way. As I said, I wasn't involved with Mr. Anderson as this project came up. I only was involved a year ago in getting an extension because he told me it was ready to expire. And we did that. We started meeting with people that could take this on, and I think we're at the point now where we need to have, and there's other developers in the area, we all know that, have developers that are willing to take a portion of it in conjunction with what Mr. Anderson wants to do, possibly with his own house, to get this going, get it off the ground. I'm trying to ask for time to get it off the ground, and, you know, I guess I'm disappointed when I'm hearing the council doesn't want to do that. It's kind of like they want to punish Mr. Anderson because he didn't have all his ducks in a row 2 years ago. I had nothing to do with that. You know, I'm trying to help him now. I've worked with a number of developers in the Cedar Valley, and it's a little disconcerting to, quite honestly, to to hear that, no, we don't want to give him time. You know, we're just going to put him on the clock and either he gets it done or this whole thing will fall apart. And I guess that would be very disconcerting to me as a member of the city of Waterloo and the Cedar Valley.
And what I'll say to Ms. Ewan, hold on for a second. So what I'll say for all of us, at least on the council side and mayor side, let's be a little careful when we tell the public or anyone looking about what Mr. Anderson wants to do or not to do. Because I did hear a couple of the comments putting words in on what his ulterior motive is that I just wanted to clarify. Mrs. Ewan, we'll take one more from you, and then we'll go to Mr.
Clarify,
Bozen.
Mr. Morris, we are not disparaging Mr. Anderson. Our question is, my question at least is he's had experience in development in this city for a long time. I'm disappointed that he didn't anticipate this problem and plan for it. And we've given 2 years. You're asking for another 2 years. So I think we are being as reasonable as we can be, but none of us want to have 2 years come down the road with nothing changing. And I'm not sure what I'm seeing that will change if he doesn't have any partners lined up. And I'm just throwing out, if he wants to have the area developed in a certain way, couldn't he put in covenants and then sell them to developers that want to do the job, have the experience, and are willing to accept those covenants? My question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think he answered that on the last one. Mr. Bozen.
No, he did not.
Actually, Mr. Boyce raised, and he hasn't spoken yet.
Who was that?
Mr. Boyce.
And he hasn't spoken.
Rick, I thought you answered her question in the first round, but do you want to clarify really quickly again?
Well, I said just a minute ago that those covenants come about when you file a deed of dedication. That's where there are a number of covenants to comply with what the city requires. And that's what we need is a deed of dedication for the, Paradise Estates First Edition. And that comes with a final plat. It doesn't come necessarily in the preliminary plat. It comes in the final plat so that the city can take a look at it through P&Z and through the respected members of the council to say, yeah, this looks good, this looks fine, and we're going to go ahead and approve it so that the project can move ahead developing X amount of lots with these kind of covenants on. So there really isn't, there isn't a purpose now to come up with covenants because I don't know what we would attach it to. You attach them to deeds of dedication when you file those to get the city's approval on what's going to happen in those lots in that first subdivision, second, third, and fourth.
All right, Mr. Foyce.
Hey, thank you. My question is, we're talking about this, and we're also talking about bringing a lift station out, and I guess with all of this, just to familiarize, what's the city going to be asked to do? I mean, I think somewhere in the line we've lost a little bit of that. So how much is a lift station? And then what other kinds of things are we going to be with streets and sewers and all of that stuff to, what are we actually asking the city? Because it goes back to, once we put all of that stuff in, and then if the development doesn't start happening, we've got, we've invested hundreds of thousands and, potentially millions of dollars for something that might not be there. And I think that's also kind of a concern that I have.
Noel, Jamie, or Randy, I don't know who's on the line. Infrastructure.
This is Noel. So obviously it's a 209 lot subdivision. Depending upon where they would start for the final platting and where they would start to put in lots, the majority of the area can be served by existing sewer systems. There is a portion on the southern side that cannot get into the sewer that serves the area that would need a lift station, or one of the things we've talked about is if the city would help extend a main coming from the southeast that would serve a lot other lands in that area. to open up more land for development, whether or not the city would participate, and that would be a future decision to come back with. But they had looked at that option. Basically, we had been discussing that because we did not want to have a lift station down there to maintain, so we'd rather have the gravity sewer. So that's an option that would be out there again when they would develop that southern tier of the lots. Thank you.
Mr. Bozen. Mr. Bozen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to make it perfectly clear that I don't believe that there's one person on the city council that's against development. And I don't want it to be thought of that if we deny this extension, that we're saying that we are against the development out there. I understand that's Mr. Anderson's land, and he has the right to develop it, and I encourage it, and I encourage all development in the Cedar Valley. And I don't see what this 2-year extension is going to do if we don't have an end date or an end game in sight. And so what I'm asking is, and maybe Noel can help me out with this, is if we deny it and then Mr. Anderson puts all of his ducks in a row and he lines up everyone that he needs to make this project go forward, he's just coming back before P&Z to represent it and then present his preliminary plat and final plat back to council. And then we're not stuck with a 2-year end date. So that's my thoughts on that. And I personally, I'd like to call the question and just move forward with this.
Well, I think we had someone had their hand up prior to that, but Mr. Anderson, you want to answer the question? I think Mrs. Klein.
Hi, this is Noel. Yes, that is correct. If this was denied tonight, the basic process changes, then they would have to go back to Planning Commission again with the preliminary plat as well as the final plat approvals before coming back to council.
All right.
There you go.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Klein had her hand up prior to Mr. Bozen.
I just want to make this remark. I mean, we've worked with developers a lot in the city of Waterloo, and we've allowed lengthy delays. I mean, we've had, the grocery store has had lengthy delays. We've had developers that have had delays before. I'm just not sure why there's so much upset over this delay with the gentleman who owns the property. A lot of the delays, especially grocery stores on property that we've got, we've got a horse in that. So I just don't see why this uproar is happening. It's this man's land. So what if it goes 2 more years? It's still his land. He could let it sit, or he could even develop in a lesser quality way. I think it's a high quality project. It's going to bring a lot of taxes if it happens. The word "if" is a strange word, but he that property.
And then we had, I think, Mr. Greider and then Mr. Bozen had called the question.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo some of what the counselor at large said. Asking questions in this forum as an elected body is what we were elected to do. And I don't think that this is a black or white issue of if we ask questions about this for a project that has not gone the way it's gone. And to remark on the counselor from Ward 1, you're right, there have been a lot of projects that have significant delays. And I think that moving forward, we really need to have a more clear-cut policy about delaying, because I understand people's money and time and all of that, but you have to start with the end in mind, and we have to ask developers if we're going to get into a partnership with them, just like they're getting into private partnerships to do these things, that we all know where we're going on the same trip. So I don't think that makes any of us anti-development. I think that makes us reasonable stewards of the city's money, which will come in part to this, as well as just wanting to be aware of the things that we're approving that are going to impact the lives of citizens for decades.
All right, and no, just for clarifications, because once this leaves here, I don't want any misperception. Is the city asked to build streets for this project? Are we building
No, the
streets?
streets would be the streets would be the developer's responsibility.
All right. And so,
Second.
so that clarifies the discussion, and Mr. Bozen had called the question previously. We do have two of them, and one of them is item number 13, and we have a Ben Logs done on the phone line for the early access agreement with the 319631 number.
Yep, I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
All right, you have some comments?
Really no comments per se, just appreciate the consideration. We'd like to get a head start, potentially get a head start out on that control site before we're able to close with the city. So I'm here if anybody has any questions.
All right. Let's take 12 and 13. Any questions on 13?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I was just seconding Council Member Bozen's calling the question because I believe it requires a second and then a vote on calling the question.
Yeah, we're voting. Madam Clerk, 12 and 13.
Mr. Bozen,
No on 12, yes on 13.
Mr. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey,
Yes.
Mrs. Klein,
Yes.
Mr. Foyce,
Yes.
Mr. Greider,
No on 12, yes on 13.
and Mrs. Jewin.
No on 12, yes on 13.
So what is it? Count 4, 3. All right. So by the hair of the chinny chin chin, Mr. Rick, it did pass and 13 passed. So can someone take the last two items? 14.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Greider. Birthday, Mr. Greider.
Hold on one second.
I can read them if you need me to.
Yeah.
Please do, Mr.
Okay,
Foyce.
number 14 is a resolution approving a supplemental agreement for professional services with Terracon Consultants, Inc. of Cedar Falls, Iowa, originally executed April 12th, 2019 in an amount not to exceed $20,189 in conjunction with the biosolids modification project for geotechnical material testing services, and authorize the mayor to execute said document. And 15 is a resolution accepting grant number 3-19-0094-048-2020 from the US DOT and FAA in the amount of $300,000 via the CARES Act and Public Law 116-136 for reimbursements to the Waterloo Regional Airport for lost revenue associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute said document.
Second.
All right, that motion's with the second. Any questions on these two items? Are there questions? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey,
Yes.
Mrs. Klein, Mr. Foyce,
Yes.
Mr. Greider,
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin,
Yes.
and Mr. Bozen.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion's been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, council.